A Wisconsin World War II hero's private collection is about to go on display right here in Madison, helping to honor those he served with. James Maggie McGillis grew up in Fond du Lac and went on to fight in Holland during World War II. His heroics serving with the 82nd Airborne Division were featured in the book and movie A Bridge Too Far. McGillis died several years ago at the age of 103. Though he spent his last years in Texas, his sons say Wisconsin was always home.
We always felt this was the right place. This is a museum dedicated to Wisconsin veterans. And I think first and foremost, he would have said that he was a Wisconsin veteran.
It's humbling because, as he would say, these are his people. To be here with fellow Wisconsin people that served, that fought for our country, he would be honored if he was here today.
McGillis had amassed his own private museum in his home. Wisconsin Veterans Museum curator Kevin Hampton had developed a friendship with him. He says he hoped he could display some of his items, never expecting the family to donate it all.
It is the humanity behind the history and realizing that it's an individual. You read about these things in battles and you look at the maps and show that this unit went here and did this, but it's the individual account, it's the individual experience, but it's also the lessons that they leave with us.
The collection goes on display tomorrow at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. Get this, it will be on a permanent exhibit. Pretty cool.